Welcome to Nurturing the Whole Child with Teacher Miriam. Today we look at caregiving for children with special needs. Even as we do this, it's important for us, for starters, to know that just like any other child, children with special needs have just the same needs. A child with special needs has the same need for care, the same need for love, and the same need for a safe and secure environment as a typically developing child. So even as we look at caregiving for children with special needs, then we do not mean that these children have needs that are way too different from the needs of the other children. Because remember, we are saying they are children with special needs. Even as we define them, we don't start with what they have, but we'll start their definition by saying they are first children. And that is why we are saying they are children with special needs. So, worth noting is that they are first children, then we can now describe them to say that they have special needs. So, like just any other child, a child with special needs will need to be loved, will need to be fed, will need to get a space to play and to develop their skills. They will need a family, they will need a clean and safe environment. So just think of whatever need that you think any typically developing child needs. You will realize that even this child with special needs equally has the same needs. However, as we raise or as we give care to children with special needs, we will realize that most of the time we will need to do a bit of adjustments here and there so that we take care of them at their point of needs. So, by all means, caregiving for children with special needs, therefore, will definitely be a little more demanding in the sense that as a caregiver for a child or children with special needs, you will definitely need to equip yourself with some necessary skills depending on whatever special need that you're handling a child for. So say like if you're handling a child with in the autism spectrum, or a child with cerebral palsy, a child with Down syndrome, a child with a physical impairment or a hearing impairment, whatever it is, the special need that you're handling, as a caregiver, you will need to equip yourself with knowledge concerning that special need. And just even before we go to equipping yourself for a particular special need, a caregiver generally needs to be well equipped about child development and child care. What is it that a child should be doing at a particular stage in their development? What is the window of opportunity that is available for a particular child at a certain age? So general knowledge about child development is essential for any caregiver. Coming to children with special needs, if you're handling a child in the autism spectrum, for instance, whether as a teacher or as a caregiver who has been hired to take care of this child, or even as a school teacher, you need to know what it is that this child, what you need to understand the special need, or you need to understand the condition that this child is dealing with. That way, you'll have equipped yourself to offer the right support for such a child. You know, at times when we are caring for children that we do not know what they're dealing with, we can find ourselves at a situation where we feel overwhelmed and we feel like it's just too much, we can't take it. You know, my interaction with parents to children with special needs have brought out the issue of the issue of this challenge of caregiving for children with special needs. They will say, you will hear parents sharing of stories of them hiring a nanny, and within 3 days, the nanny is just out. They can't take it. And we cannot blame the nanny. Most of the time, it's because they do not understand the condition that they are coming to handle. They don't, no one no one talks to them other than them knowing I am coming in to handle a child with special needs. They do not know then what should I do for such a child? What do I need to do if a child, for instance, is having a meltdown? What do I need to do to keep the child calm? So that is what I mean by equipping yourself. So even as a parent, because parents are by default caregivers, in most cases, um, for in most cases for children with special needs, we find parents being the primary caregivers. At times, we will have this child being taken care of by a hired caregiver. They'll also be in school where they'll be taken care of by teachers. So it will be a lot of stress both for the child and the caregiver if the caregiver does not understand the condition and the uniqueness of that child. We can never emphasize the uniqueness of each child at all because every child is definitely unique. Whether there are three children in the spectrum, they will not again be the same just because they are all in the spectrum or because they are all handling or dealing with the same condition. So as caregivers, when we are taking care of a child, the first important thing is for us to know that this child, first of all, is a child. Secondly, they are unique. Just by being themselves, they are unique. And then thirdly, they are unique in the sense that unlike a typically developing child, they are handling or they are dealing with a certain condition. So that's for a caregiver, it saves a lot of strain and stress to equip yourself with the knowledge. Get to know how does this condition manifest, and once these manifestations are evident, what do I need to do? If this child is throwing tantrums, if this child is, experiencing a meltdown, as it were, what do I need to do as a caregiver? Do you equally get upset? Look overwhelmed and there is no control, no balance. And the child can see that. So that equipping yourself with skills as a caregiver is very important. Again, as a caregiver to a child with special needs, whether at home or at school or even in churches, we need to realize that caring for children with special needs requires a bit of adjustment. Like you cannot, you know, act like everything is cast on stone, and if this doesn't happen now, then it will never happen. It is true that children thrive through instructors when they are when they are put in structures, when they know this is time for this and this is time for that. So we need to be a little more flexible in times of even time. They may not eat, for instance, as fast as other typical developing children of their age. So do you just say now this was the time allocated for eating, time for eating is up, we pack up whatever food is remaining and and clear the table. So those kind of adjustments in times of time and also in terms of even structures, if a child with special needs will need enough playing space, then you cannot, put them in a space that is so packed up, so crowded. They will need space. They will need to, maybe sometimes they will be pacing up and down. Sometimes they will not just sit still like any typically a developing child would. So you'll need to make such an adjustment even in designing your setup, your home setup. Do you put, where do you crowd your sitting space with tables and chairs so that your child will be banging their heads on furniture even as they move around the house? And in a classroom setup, do you provide a space for them just in case they cannot sit still on a chair. Can they sit down on a mat, for instance? Are they allowed to have time and space where they can do an activity that they'll find interesting as opposed to being forced to fit into a certain structure for the sake of, having harmony in a setup, in a class setup, whether or at home for the sake of the peace of everyone else. And that is why we go back to the issue of uniqueness. Having realized that this child is unique, then you can make provisions for their uniqueness. As a caregiver to a child with special needs, it's also very important to maintain a positive attitude. It is true that childcare is overwhelming. Taking care of a child is not an easy task, but it's even much more demanding for someone taking care of a child with special needs. So you need to maintain a positive attitude. Remember, children read emotions. Children are able to tell when you are just off, when you're moody, when you're exhausted, when you're having a bad day. And so if they read this, most likely they will either withdraw or even act up, throw more tantrums, and just become disoriented. And so it's important for you to take care of yourself first as a caregiver. Having this knowledge that I'm taking care of a child, yes, but this is a child that is not growing as a typical child for their developmental age. With that kind of knowledge, then you take up the task with a lot of positivity and a lot of energy, knowing that a lot will be demanded on you. And even as you take care of this child, regardless, again, because as we have previously talked about exceptional children and twice exceptional children, you may find that these exceptional children, at times, some of them are actually, in most cases, their developmental age, their chronological age, like say a 12-year-old, you will not expect them to be doing things that a typically developing child of the same age is doing. So as you take care, as you care give, you need to know that first of all, this is a child, and then secondly, you will not keep getting upset that this child is not able to accomplish tasks that their peers are doing, because we already have defined them as children with special needs. So you don't keep saying, you mean a 12-year-old can do this? You mean a 10-year-old? You mean this is a 7-year-old who cannot use the toilet on their own? No. If you maintain a positive attitude, you will know that you are walking this walk with this child, and however tiny these milestones are, however tiny a pace you take to achieve these milestones, you will need to be positive and celebrate at every stage. So if sitting on the toilet seat or on the potty was a big deal, for instance, and one day this child sits on it, then that is a point to celebrate. So you keep maintaining positivity until when you get to a point where this child is achieving is operating at their highest potential. Because even with special needs, every child has their inbuilt potential, they have their inbuilt capacity. And our work and your work as a caregiver is to facilitate the growth of this child and to the point where they achieve their highest potential. So special children with special needs, I am being very careful, and I hope everyone can note this. That I'm being careful not to say special needs children, because when you say special needs children, we are not first acknowledging that these are children. So as a caregiver, anyone, a caregiver can be defined as anyone who is taking care of someone. In our case, it's someone taking care of a child for a long time, for a long term. So this goes to parents because, like I've said, by default, as parents, we are caregivers. Goes to teachers, goes to those hired nannies at home. Equip yourself, be positive, take care of yourself. Self-care is another important thing. When you're giving care, when you're offering care to a child with special needs, you need to be at your optimum, state. Take care of yourself. If you can't get enough sleep, if you can, when the child is taking a nap, take your own nap, because you'll need energy. You'll need energy to be up on your toes to check on this child. Remember, some of these children do not even have a sense of danger. So if you just let them to be on their own, they could hurt themselves. So it requires you to be upbeat. You won't be taking care of a child with special needs when you yourself are so exhausted you can hardly function. So self-care is very, very important. Acknowledging that this is what you're doing, this is what you love doing, and getting all the necessary support, seeking help from professionals. Most of the children, or a good number of children with special needs, are under therapy, say occupational therapy, speech therapy, and all. Whatever therapy the child that you're taking care of is going through, get close to the specialist, get to know what does an occupational therapist do. And even for parents with children with special needs, if you have nannies, carry them along as you take your child for your therapy sessions. Let them sit along, let them see what happens in a therapy session. That way they are getting support that they will need. They can still uh, try and practice the same things that the therapist is practicing, even when they are taking care of the child. So when you include them, when you make them know that you can always call the therapist, you can always ask what I mean in case you're stuck, it helps the caregiver to get all the skills that they need. Finally, as we take care of children with special needs, I need to repeat this. Let's not forget they are first children. Whatever age they are, do not judge them as, like, you're already too big, you shouldn't be doing this. They are first children. Remember all the things that a child needs, all the love, all the care, all the encouragement, all the guidance. We're not saying that just because you're taking care of a child with special needs, you let them have their way. You let them, just behave anyhow. The same way you will instill discipline in a child, in a typically developing child, is the same way you need to instill discipline in a child with special needs. Like we always say, our intention for taking care of these children, for nurturing them, is for them to thrive in the world where they will be interacting with people who have typically developed. So we're not going to set them apart and have a pity party where we let them have their way, where we let them, misbehave just because they have special needs. When whatever value you can instill as a parent, as a teacher, and as a caregiver, a nanny to a typically developing child, instill the same values. If a child needs to be respectful, make the child with special needs, get to know that they need also to be respectful. Only that you'll need to adjust how you train this child from the way you train the other child. But whatever it is that you would want a typically developing child to grow up knowing or grow up with, the spirit should be the same for a child with special needs. Because we are saying they are first children, then we can now talk about them having special needs. If you love what we're doing, please do not forget to like and to share and to subscribe to this channel so that we keep sharing this information to help us make this world a better place, a child at a time.